everybody. Welcome to our episode this week of Pax Americana. Very sorry that we had to skip last week, but I was in Israel and it was a very nice trip. We had a great time, went all over the place, started out in Jerusalem. We were there because my son was having his bar mitzvah there at the Western Wall. Randomly, as we were going to the Western Wall. I don't know if you've ever been there, Olga, but they segregate men and women by gender. So I go into the women's section. My husband and a few other people go to the men's section just to see it. And I come out of the women's section and I'm waiting for them, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And he comes out and he goes, "Guess who I ran into here?" And I go, "Who?" And he goes, "Scott Jennings." I go, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
I saw photos on Twitter of him. I
Yeah.
don't know why he comes into my feed, but
Uh,
I saw that he kept popping into my feed, and I'm
oh,
like, really? He's there too? Oh, God.
he was there too,
Mm.
as my husband found out. So that was kind of funny. Anyway, it was a great trip. We went up to Galilee. It was beautiful, very nice, very relaxing. And then we went back to Tel Aviv. And we were supposed to fly out on Sunday. We're going to have just a few days in Tel Aviv to hang out at the beach and just enjoy the city. For people who have not been to Tel Aviv, it's basically Miami. It's the same kind of concept, crazy party city with great high rises and a beautiful beach. So I thought, okay, after all of this travel and all of this, stuff, we could just chill out in Tel Aviv. Well, the first night we were in Tel Aviv, the siren rings, and I'm thinking, okay, it's probably the same siren they have every time the Houthis fire a missile. It's not a big deal. We were told to go into the stairwell of our hotel if anything went off. So we go into the stairwell. It's about 2:30 in the morning, and that's when we find out that Israel has now decided to bomb Iran. And I'm thinking, oh shit, I am never getting out of here now. So immediately they cancel all of the planes and everything gets canceled. And this is the outrageous part. And I want people to listen to me because the media has not been covering this. And I am supposed to be on CNN tonight. And I'm going to take everybody to task on this because it's just amazing that this was not covered. I emailed the American embassy at about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning on Friday morning. And I said, hello, introduced myself. My husband and son and I are here in Israel, and we are looking for assistance to get home because we need to get home. And the response that I received 2 hours later is, "Dear Julie, thank you so much for your email. The embassy is closed today, and we are not providing Americans with any assistance to get home. But just so you know, we have advised all of our government employees to shelter in place. So as you make your own security plans, just take that into account. And the airport is closed, but the crossing to Jordan is open. So for your own security plans, just have that information." And I was just in complete shock. For the American embassy, to be closed on the day that they knew, I mean, let's be clear, Donald Trump had a heads up that this was going to happen. They knew that war was breaking out. They knew that people were trapped in a war zone. They were closed and appallingly admitted that they were not providing assistance to anybody else. And the part that I want people to understand, because people would say, well, it's hard, you're in a war zone. China, all of the EU countries, Albania, little tiny Albania, evacuated all of their residents who wanted to leave, all of their nationals who wanted to leave. Every country you could think of evacuated their residents and their nationals, not just from Israel, but some from Tehran as well. And we were stuck for days. And the missiles kept being fired on us. We obviously couldn't do anything. We kept running to the shelter. And I'll tell you, after a couple of hours of sleep, you start getting crazed because you're exhausted. You haven't slept and you're running up and down and up and down. So at that point, I realized I had to take matters into my own hands because the government was just not going to help. They were not going to help. And so here's what I did. I had a friend drive us 4 hours to southern Israel, to Eilat. We walked. It's nice that I've been a refugee once before in my life because this was very familiar. We walked across the border with our suitcases to Egypt, where we had to find and hire a Bedouin to take us another 3.5, 4 hours to Sharm el Sheikh, which is the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula. And then we got on a plane to London and then another plane back here. But first of all, this was extraordinarily expensive. But second, I had to figure this out all by myself. The embassy provided no help, no guidance, no help, no nothing, nothing. While other countries were evacuating their residents, their nationals, I keep saying residents. And I just want people to understand how abnormal that is. First, because other countries were doing it. But second, because in 2006, when Israel went to war with Lebanon, the Bush administration evacuated any American who wanted to go home from both Lebanon and Israel. After October 7th, Gaza happened. The Biden administration evacuated any American who wanted to go home from both Gaza and Israel. So it's not like they can't do it. It's that Mike Huckabee chose not to do it, and Marco Rubio chose not to do it. And so I don't know what America first means, but it does not mean Americans first.
No.
Because Americans were stranded. And by the way, for anybody who's watching this who might be MAGA, which I doubt you are, but in case you are, understand this applies to Scott Jennings just as much as it applied to Julie Roginski. I mean, this applied to everybody. They don't care what your affiliation is. They don't care if you like Donald Trump or not. They left Americans stranded and admitted that they provided no assistance. And now this morning, a week later, it is now Thursday, so almost a week later, I get an email from the embassy again. Dear Julie, in case you're still in Israel, fill out this form because now we're talking about getting people out. But we need you to sign a promissory note to repay the American government for the flight that they're going to arrange for you to some other place. It's not going to be the United States. They're going to, I don't know if it's Cyprus or Oman or wherever they're going to evacuate people to. You have to repay the American government. I have to repay the American government that is using my taxpayer dollars to evacuate me from a war zone? What if I don't have the money? So now only people who can afford to be evacuated are going to be evacuated?
Wow.
I see people's comments here, WTF and whatever else. You're absolutely right.
Wow.
You're absolutely right. It cost me over $10,000 to get out of there, to come home. And now they're saying you have to sign a promissory note to get repaid. It's our taxpayer dollars.
That's the whole function of the embassy.
What job do you have? I mean, and they're still closed.
That is the function of the embassy to, not only deal with visas and everything, but to deal with nationals in the country and to arrange for them to get out if they need
Of
to. This is incredible. Wow.
It's it's
Wow, wow,
it's
wow.
it's amazing, and I don't think people understand, and the media is not talking about this at all. As I said, I don't care what the subject is on CNN tonight. This is what I'm going to be talking about at 10 o'clock. If they don't cancel me, they might, because I've been so crazed about this. But, uh, you know, you have to promise to pay them back?
A week later. A week later. I mean, they emailed you a week after you reached out to them. The whole thing is so sickening, but I mean, it's on par with all the clowns that Trump has put in. They've gutted the State Department, and this, honestly, I've never heard anything like this because I could tell you Ukrainians will evacuate. They were evacuating Americans from Afghanistan because the Americans couldn't leave the airport during those evacuations. I am pretty sure they did not send a bill to the American government, like, here, we evacuated X amount and brought them to the airport for you, and that's it. I mean, this is incredible. And the fact that they knew this was coming, they
They
should
knew it.
have sent an alert to Americans saying that, if tensions are high and if you are interested in, now is the time to leave. They knew this was coming. This
Of
wasn't an
course.
accidental war. Israel bombed Iran.
Of
Like,
course.
they knew
That's
this was
that's the part that kills me, and you raise a really good point, because they did evacuate people after October 7th. And that nobody knew about. Nobody knew that was coming. And they still were able to evacuate people. That Lebanon war in 2006, that began because the Lebanese attacked Israel, and then Israel decided to go to war against Lebanon. Also not a heads up, right? They knew this was coming. And the part that kills me is they are extorting American citizens saying you have to sign a note to repay us for us to get you out of here. I don't care if it costs $10. What do I pay my taxes for? That's one. And two, they're still closed. The embassy is still closed. They're closed. How do you do that? How is the embassy of the United States closed? You have one job. I mean, truly, you have one job. I mean, it's not one job, but their main job is to provide consular services to Americans
Yeah.
abroad. You are representing the United States and its citizens abroad. And then they send this message saying, we don't advise you to go through the Sinai, which is what we did because we can't come to we have very limited Americans are not allowed to, American government is not allowed to operate in Sinai. So basically you're on your own. Okay.
Well,
First of all,
apparently can't operate in Israel either. Because
let me say something. The Egyptians were wonderful. I mean, wonderful. We got to the airport at Sharm el Sheikh. The guy had no idea where we were coming from. He said, how long have you been in Egypt? And we said, a few hours. And he kind of looked at us strangely and said, why? And we said, we're coming from Israel. And I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be saying this. The guy said to me, this Egyptian guy said to me, I am so sorry about what you probably had to go through. And could not have been nicer. And then I come to find out that on this list of banned countries, this idiot who sits in the White House right now wants to put Egypt on that list. Now, if you put Egypt on that list, what is going to happen to Americans who show up at the Taba crossing when they leave Israel to try to escape? If I were Egypt, I'd say, okay, you don't want us in your country, we don't want you in our country. And then what? And then where would we go?
well,
Like, are you not thinking? Is this not clear? Does nobody look at a map over there?
no. Do you see who we have? I laughed because, here you have one of the most potentially serious wars, breaking out in the Middle East. And the media is like, so seriously, Trump is assembling his national security cabinet. I'm like, have they looked at his cabinet? I mean, it's a bunch of TV hosts and drunks and former
Guys,
criminals.
I used to drink with Pete Hegseth. I've gone drinking with him. Like, this is not somebody I want in charge of World War
No.
III right now. I'm sorry, it's just not. I know all these guys.
You
I
know
know
what's
them.
even scarier? Trump doesn't want him in charge, according.
No, Trump doesn't want him. He doesn't want Tulsi. You know what? As far as I'm concerned, good. From
Yeah,
my
but
understanding
I
is
mean, you have the defense secretary who's being sidelined because apparently Trump thinks he's incompetent. So why did you put him as head of the defense secretary? To rename bases? To scrub, achievements by women and black
African
people?
American. Yeah.
Yeah, on for America. I mean, like, what is it that you put him? To erase history, rewrite history?
I, I just want people to understand. Well, a couple of things I want people to understand. One, I cannot explain to you how much more committed I am to this Gaza thing being over because I lived through that missile bombing stuff for 3 nights, and I knew that I was getting out eventually, and I was in Israel, which is a hell of a lot safer, and I had safe rooms, and we had basements to run to and all the protections. I actually didn't feel unsafe when I was there. I watched Iron Dome knock down the missiles, like, I didn't feel like I was in jeopardy, but I will tell you, it messes with your head because you cannot get any sleep. Because you're either asleep and the missile alarm wakes you up, or you're half asleep with one ear open waiting for the alarm to go off. That's why I had to get out of there because my son was like, we need to go. But uh, people in Gaza, these kids in Gaza don't have that
No.
luxury. And it is first of all, it's obviously physically incredibly dangerous, but it's also for the people who survived. It is just psychologically, this is no way to live. It's just not. But that aside, and I don't know what we're doing with Iran. We could leave that to people who are better experts than I am about that. But I will tell you that the reality of what we just elected is that Americans are on their own. The same way that I was, the same way that everybody there is. If you don't have the money to pay, tough luck. You're stuck in a war zone. This
And
government
even if you do
will
have the money to pay, tough luck. We'll get back to you
tough luck.
maybe a
We'll get back
week,
to you. I mean,
a week, 2 weeks later to try to extort you.
as of
Maybe.
today, they told me to put my name on some spreadsheet. Like, what? It's been a week. How are the Chinese able to just extract their people? They just did.
Yeah.
They just did. And some governments sent planes, some governments sent ferries to take
Ships.
you to Cyprus.
Yeah. Okay.
We first tried to get a ferry to Cyprus, couldn't find anybody, not a ferry, ferries are all gone. We first tried to get somebody to have who had a boat to take us to Cyprus, couldn't find anybody. Finally, somebody I knew found somebody for us. Do you know what they were offered to charge us? $5,000 a head. That's $15,000 for 3 people, for me, my husband, and my son. So obviously we're like, hell no, we don't, who the hell's got that kind of money? But and that's a 10-hour boat ride. It's not like he was taking us, transatlantic, delivering us to New York Harbor. I wouldn't even pay that much money for the Queen Mary to take me to New York Harbor. But again, I am very lucky because I have a lot of friends in Israel, I have family in Israel, and I have somebody who just was like, this is what we're doing, and we decided to do it. And we did it at 6 a.m. because we knew the bombs, the missiles, the last few days have stopped falling around 5:30 in the morning and started falling again a few hours later. And we're like, okay, let's get this one little window now where we can be outside for multiple hours and not worry about being missiled to death. Um, but and as we were driving south, we saw the missiles. We heard that there were missiles up north. So it was the luck of the draw. We were very lucky. We got out.
Thank God.
Most people don't have, there are kids on birthright trips right now. And birthright, and I want people to know this. So birthright, this is just amazing. Birthright is an organization that takes young Jewish kids to Israel for free. And there's a lot of kids who do this. I read, and actually wrote a Substack about this yesterday. Birthright privately is evacuating their people, I believe, to Cyprus. And when they get to Cyprus, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, you're going to throw up, Olga, when I praise who I'm about to praise, there were 4 planes waiting, chartered by Ron DeSantis in the state of Florida, to fly people back to Florida. Ron DeSantis is doing it. Ron DeSantis is doing it. Why is the United States government not doing it? If the state of Florida can get 4 planes to Cyprus and work with Birthright, this organization, to evacuate people, and it's not just kids that they're evacuating, they're apparently evacuating a lot more, a private organization, where are the ferries chartered by the United States government?
They don't care.
Where are the buses to just say, hey, get on this bus and we are going to drive you with the help of the military to Amman, Jordan. And in Amman, Jordan, there will be planes waiting and we will get you on those military planes home.
They don't care. They don't care.
And the question is, were they military planes? No, they were just Florida, just chartered planes. But in Cyprus, it doesn't matter whether they're military or not because you're out of the war zone.
Yeah. No, they don't care. They really don't care. And just you talked about the psychological aspect, of what you went through 3 nights. Imagine, or
Ukraine.
Palestinians are going through this already almost 3 years. Ukrainians are going through this almost 4 years. I mean, as everyone is focused right now on Iran. I mean, Russia has ramped up their attacks. The images coming out of Ukraine are horrific. Like a tall high-rise building with a missile smack, like flying right into the building. And this is just like nonstop. They're bombarding them with drones, with missiles, and like Russia's really taking advantage right now that the world is not paying attention. And this is the same thing there. When I was in Ukraine, the same exact thing. It's, sirens, get up, go. Like you don't get a full night's sleep because you're constantly either hearing the raid sirens and have to leave, or you literally get to a point that you actually hear raid sirens that are not happening
Yeah.
because because you're like in that state of mind. Um, And the fact is, I mean, Ukrainians have been going through this, and now the world has shifted back to the Middle East. Things are even getting worse now there. I mean, Russia really is like unpacking and sending hundreds of drones per night, dozens of ballistic missiles. So it's
It's it is no way to live. I mean,
no,
I will tell you, for me, and I can't speak. Listen, I was only there for 3 days when this was happening, so I can't pretend that I'm an expert in this. But for me, the worst part, Olga, was worrying about what was to come, not while it was happening. Right when it was happening,
yeah,
you're in your safe room, and
yeah, yeah,
you're like, okay, it's happening. But that that anticipation where you can't sleep and you're constantly on edge because you know it's coming. Like I've always said when I was little, Sunday nights were the worst because because you knew Monday was happening. You had to go to school. Like once Monday
yeah.
came around, you're in it. You're like, okay. But Sunday night, like I had the Sunday night dreads where you're like, oh God, I have to go to school tomorrow. It was kind of that same thing. And the part that I will tell you that is also really disappointing is so the first night when they bombed Iran was Israel time, Thursday to Friday morning, right? So it was Friday,
Hmm.
early Friday morning, like 2:30 in the morning. That entire day we stayed put. We didn't really go anywhere, obviously, and we watched CNN. And Jim Sciutto from CNN was on, and it was obviously midnight or something in New York or Washington, wherever he was from, and it was
Hmm.
7 o'clock in the morning where we were watching CNN, and he anchored, I think, throughout the night here, the night day for us. I got more information from watching Jim Sciutto on CNN than I did from our government, which, by the way, provided no information. Zero.
That's incredible.
Zero.
Wow. That just shows you the incompetence we saw what Musk was doing. I mean, he literally walked in with his operatives. They started gutting the State Department, gutting every single agency in the government, and this is the result of it.
Yeah.
So here you go. If
Yeah.
you're an American abroad good luck. You're on your own, and hopefully you have money to get out. If not, then just wither away in a country because the American government's not going to come get you.
Yeah. And listen, if I went to Ukraine today, I get it. I know the risks. I know what I'm taking on. People who were there were not planning to be in a war zone. I mean, they understood the dangers of Gaza, and that's fine, but planes were flying in and out.
Yeah, yeah. The airport was open.
The airport was open. Now the
Yeah,
airport is closed, still closed. My understanding is the Haifa airport is just reopened. It's a tiny airport, and I think they're flying people from Haifa to Cyprus. But again, those are people who can afford to fly.
incredible. Incredible.
Yeah. So I just
Not
want people,
surprising.
I want people to understand what's happening because unfortunately, our media is doing nothing on this. They're sitting there with this whole like, is he gonna? Is he not gonna? Is he gonna bomb the? And Trump is playing this like a reality show host, right? Like every day is like a cliffhanger. Am I gonna do it? Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Like this is not how you run a war
No,
or
no, no.
foreign
No,
policy or
no,
diplomacy or
no.
anything.
No. You I actually posted on Twitter, like, we're gonna find out that there's a war because for for those of us that don't have Truth Social, because Trump posted it, because I mean this is really how we're getting information is from Trump's Truth Social post. It's not an address to the nation that we potentially are about to go to war with Iran. It's not meetings of cabinet members on various TV channels telling Americans, like, prepare. We might send your sons and daughters to go fight in Iran because, I mean, it's easy to bomb anything. That's not a problem. But Iran is 90 million people. And if whichever way it goes, if the regime falls, then you're going to have chaos and a whole cesspool for terrorist bases to be built, and I mean
Ugh,
it just becomes the whole situation is I can't even tell you. I am sitting there between scratching my head the past week because I've been like glued to this.
Mhm.
And I'm used by what is happening within Megaland. Like I am like between both. And on one hand, I'm in shock, because not in shock, but just like I don't know, like what the fuck? Because like we're sitting here about to potentially get ourselves involved in a war. There's no planning. There's nothing. No, like Trump's idea is, I think, to maybe throw a bomb, to maybe a bomb that's never been tested, to maybe blow up, the nuclear facility. And then what happens? You know,
Well,
they're not warning us about the risks. I
yeah.
can tell you, like, as far as with Iran, and the coverage is absolutely insane because there are two things that have really irked me. One, that you have every media outlet has brought on every expert on nuclear weapons, on Iran, on this. Do you know that there has been zero mention? I am probably the only one sitting on Twitter, like, keep repeating myself like a parrot, that Russia is the one who provides Iran with nuclear materials. Zero mention. I mean, Trump is sitting and having, oh, I talked to Putin. He wants to mediate. Mediate what? He's the one who has been assisting Iran with their nuclear weapon. What exactly are you mediating? Like,
Well, Putin, yeah, I love Putin. Putin offers to mediate, which is fantastic. But, to your point, uh, you have an Israeli government. And listen, when I spoke to Israelis, they're like, this is great regime change in Iran. And I said to them, to the people who I was with, um, as somebody who's lived in a country that's tried that for the last 25 years, twice, once in Iraq, once in Afghanistan, or first in Afghanistan, then in Iraq, it doesn't work. It doesn't like, what do you think you're getting if you overthrow these mullahs in Iran? Do you think you're getting some sort of flourishing Jeffersonian democracy? Do you think the Shah's coming back, who, by the way, was awful and oppressive to his people too? Like, what do you think you're getting? Do you think you're getting a puppet regime? Because we didn't get a puppet regime in Iraq. We certainly didn't end up with a puppet regime in Afghanistan. 90 million people in Iran. I mean, it's not a small country.
no,
Much larger than Iraq was, certainly much larger than Afghanistan was. And do they think that this is not going to unify the Iranian people? Because it's Israel that's doing this. It's like the boogeyman is doing this. If we suddenly had regime change from Russia in the 1970s, from the Soviet Union in the 1970s, if somebody somehow Russia finally came here and created a regime change, do they think that Americans, after all of the propaganda they've been hearing rightly actually about the Soviet Union for the previous 50 years, all of a sudden they would say, oh, okay, great, we're going to welcome you, like, with flowers as liberators? Of course not.
yeah. And the thing is, like, I personally, frankly, I'm not invested in that region. I have enough on my
Yeah.
plate, to monitor, um, how you call it, Ukraine. But the thing is that, look, Iran by no means. I mean, this is a dictatorship. I mean, I absolutely am, you know, disgusted that they were allowed for 3+ years to supply Russia with weapons to kill Ukrainians. I
Yep.
mean, the regime, they are murderers. They've sent,
Oh,
the IRGC sent, officials to Ukraine, to Crimea, to help Russia set up with the drones, then help them set up the drone factories. They helped Assad alongside Russia massacre, upwards of 700,000 Syrians. So I frankly don't care about, Iran.
yeah.
I care about the Iranian people because, they do deserve better. But again, this is something that they need to decide. My thing with all of this is one, it's the people who are handling it. Trump has no control. Trump has given up the control. He got backed into a corner, and I actually want to cover a little bit of this. He got backed into a corner. Netanyahu basically, sees this weakness in the White House and decide to just, let me start this. And there are no plans for after. If they had plans arranged for what will happen after, before you cause chaos in a country of 90 million people, that's one thing. The second thing that really gets me is that Musk and Trump have gutted all our agencies. I mean, our counterintelligence and terrorist agencies are pretty much gutted. They are, what's remaining is shifted over to dealing with how you call it, with immigration. For the terrorist prevention, we have a 22-year-old in charge. 22-year-old whose job was working at a grocery store, and prior to that, mowing lawns. Now, for people with and again, this is another thing not being discussed, that Iran, maybe their military capabilities, clearly we see that Israel can penetrate their airspace and that they don't have the best military capabilities, but they do have a network of terrorist cells around the globe.
Yep.
And I remember, I live in New York, and I remember it was a few years ago, there was an Iranian dissident who lives in Brooklyn. And this is what people need to understand. The scary part is that the Iranian regime ordered an assassination on her. Who did they use? The Russian mafia in Brooklyn. The Russian mafia. So you have this intertwinement between Iranian cells working with Russian mafia and other mafias, and this is in US, this is across Europe. So I mean, they're playing this game. Trump is treating this like a reality show. He really had lost all agency of the situation because like he's in a position that he really got backed into this corner. And at the same time, the threat to Americans domestically, in Europe and frankly across the globe is right now at an all-time high, as we have no agencies dealing with this. So these are my issues with this. If they would have planned this out like, a normal government, and this is what they wanted to do, then at least there would be plans, if they would have addressed the American people, because this is American, family members who have to go fight this. And if they think they're going to just drop a bomb, and someone has to go check the nuclear facility to see if it was destroyed. Someone has to go look to see if there are any other secret facilities. Russia yesterday, Russia's publicly hasn't helped Iran and like kind of backed away because they signed a comprehensive treaty of cooperation in January. So publicly they're backing away. They're like, no, 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 this doesn't mean military. But Russia will help Iran absolutely
So
with.
will China.
Yeah, China, I believe, is the one who delivered the latest batch of missiles that went on to Israel
Yeah.
yesterday. So Russia will help. And then, what Putin's answer yesterday was, oh, we have 600 specialists in the Bushehr nuclear plant, and they're staying, they're not going anywhere. So this is his, answer publicly of flaunting that he is helping Iran, with this. Privately, I'm sure Russia will be helping because they're experts at sabotage operations. They
Yeah.
could mine the Strait of Hormuz. They could mine it and disrupt oil movements. I mean, so Russia, when it comes to cutting cables and terrorist attacks and everything else, they are excellent. But the most dangerous part of this is that Trump got pushed into it because he is an idiot. And you have two countries. This is the most fascinating thing I can tell you. The past week, I have sat here watching, you know, how this is playing out. Russia is furious right now, furious of what is happening and what Trump is doing. And interestingly enough, they started a whole information operation against Trump, literally using all their Western shills that they employ. And at the same time, domestically in Russia, I mean, the coverage is just, very interesting to see. And at the same time, you have, Israel who's pushing for this. And Trump really, he's in a, And that's what's the scariest part of this. He has to make this decision whether he takes America to war. And he's stuck between a rock and a hard place because if he turns against Iran, I mean, Israel, then he's going to have hell to pay domestically and with Israel. If he turns against Russia, you're going to see. I mean, Tucker Carlson was just a taste of what's coming. Steve Bannon was just a taste of what's coming against
But
Trump.
it's interesting because he'll have hell to pay not just with, I think, the Israelis, but we're doing Saudi Arabia's dirty work for them if we go to war, right? The Saudis hate the Iranians
Hmm.
and fear the Iranians, and they want to go nuclear precisely because they want to deter. They want a deterrent. If Iran goes nuclear, then Saudi will go nuclear, and Egypt will go nuclear, and so on and so on. We're doing the dirty work for a lot of Trump's friends if we go to war. But you're
Hmm.
right that we're going to be doing it against what Vladimir Putin wants, which for Trump is hard, right? On the one hand, it's the people who are giving him, I mean, I don't know what Russia's giving him, but he certainly is making a chunk of money off of the Saudis. I mean, we know that. And I don't know, to me, it's like, who's going to pay him more to stay,
Russia, I can tell you, they're furious. I mean, for them,
well,
this is
it's
the
interesting.
closest.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's interesting because he was at the G7
Hmm.
and doing Russia's dirty work for them at the G7 and basically
Lobbyist. Huh.
lobbying. Exactly right. I don't know. I don't really know what message he had at the G7 other than to carry Russia's water. And that's very interesting at a time when the Russians have completely, as you said, turned on him. I haven't been monitoring it because I was obviously otherwise occupied when that was all happening. But my understanding, having read your stuff and having just seen what's going on, is that the Russians are incredibly angry. You're absolutely right. He has sidelined Tulsi Gabbard, who is a Russian asset. He has sidelined Pete Hegseth, who I don't think is anybody's asset other than just being a useful idiot.
Stupid.
But you have Tucker Carlson and that whole contingency going nuts. And the question for me, I guess, is what's happening here? Because he's on the one hand giving at least a middle finger rhetorically to Russia by contemplating attacking Iran. Whether he tacos his way out of this or not is a different story. But on the other hand, he is at the G7 delivering a message on behalf of Russia, and that's the only message that we saw him deliver at the G7. I don't know if there's any other that you saw. I did not see anything else. What do you make of that? This whole kind of yin and yang with him.
Well, this is the problem because, like I said, he got backed into this. Trump does not want to go to war. He does not want to go to war. Frankly, I'm pretty sure whatever's in his little mind. I'd hate to breach it, but whatever's in there, one thing is it's not war because this is something that he doesn't want. But this is the problem when America has an incompetent leader because the Israelis, I personally think, saw a chance and like, oh, look, we can now finally go because I mean they've wanted to bomb Iran like for decades. I mean,
Yeah.
Netanyahu every few years. Oh my God, they're producing nuclear weapons. They are going to have bombs ready next week. So I mean, this is every few years. Here they have a situation where Trump is so incompetent that and Mossad is like a very, very like it's
Oh, yeah.
one of the top intelligence agencies. I mean, talk about, finding a good window of opportunity. And that's it. On the other hand, you have Russia, with their security services and just in general, Russia, who, is very close to Iran. I mean, this is nothing new. They've been close to it since the Soviet days. This is one of their closest allies. Obviously, Russia's not going to go send military like tanks or, weapons or anything like that for Iran. Maybe they'll send some weapons, but right now they need it for themselves. But they will assist them, with our retaliation, especially when it comes into this, hybrid warfare, cyber attacks, and they'll do joint operations against Europe, against the United States, against American interests and American citizens. Um, So Russia, is trying to pull him back. Do you think Putin called Trump on his birthday to congratulate him happy birthday? No, he he called Putin because I mean Trump because the reports started, coming out that hey, call it about the regime change, because Russia can handle if Israel strikes Iran, causes damage, hits a few facilities, weapons depots. This is something they can recover from. But then when you have an actual regime change, they just lost Assad. Then and Assad, as close as they were, they're much, much closer to Iran. So the fact that, I will tell you, so this happened, this whole strike happened, it started 8:30 on Thursday, New York time. And I was monitoring the Russian news, RIA Novosti, the Lenta,
Right.
what is it called?
The
Newsfeed.
ticker tube, yeah.
Yeah. So I was monitoring it, and until 2:30 in the morning, and I actually posted this, until 2:30 in the morning, New York time, which is 9:30 a.m. Moscow time, they were covering for Trump. And the United States and Marco Rubio put a statement that America had no knowledge of this attack. Israel carried this out on their own, whatever. 2:30 in the morning, you saw the coverage shift. And then suddenly they started reporting that the U.S. did indeed have their hands in this attack, that they had knowledge of this attack, and whatnot. And since then, so now we're almost 1 week, I watched the operations online and domestically and online. And you see all the bots and trolls. I've never seen anything like it towards Republicans. I've seen, Russia carry the operation out against Democrats. But for every Republican congressperson who posted, I pray for Israel and God help Israel, and then some posted Psalms, sending their wishes. For every single Republican who posts and for every post on Israel, you have 1,500 comments of the most negative, post and like anti-Trump post and anti-American post. This is Russia's information, networks working against it. And then we saw immediately by last weekend, Russia, literally like crack the whip, and you saw Steve Bannon come out against this, Tucker Carlson come out against this. And I said, this is amazing because, people have this misperception that every single, like the whole MAGA movement and the whole, Congress is co-opted by Russia, but that's not it. You have a lot of people who, on one hand, are, doing it for power, to maintain power, and wherever, if it means, appeasing Russia, and this is how they can keep their power, then that's what they'll do. And then you have actually the real assets inside of Congress that Russia has co-opted. So you have Marjorie Taylor Greene since last week bashing this whole potential war. You have Matt Gates on his One News network bashing this war and bashing U.S. involvement, and he actually replayed all of Netanyahu's, statements about Iran having nuclear weapons within a week, like going back a few decades. You have Tulsi Gabbard, who actually not only, and we'll get into this in a second, but not only is, on a completely opposite page, which frankly is also so dangerous because you have the United States government and you have the director in normal times. So we're like in some kind of
Excuse me.
freaky land. Bless you.
Yeah.
Um, you have the United States government and the director of national intelligence who's being sidelined because she literally put out a video warning, apparently, after Israeli officials met with Trump. She put out a video 2 days before Israel's attack on Iran, warning that something was coming, which then again comes, to the point is she literally, signaling our adversaries and giving them a heads up that, something is there and doing it in a public way by posting a cryptic nuclear thing video. And then you have this whole, MAGA splitting. I mean, literally splitting. You have the America First, and then you have the pro-Israel crowd. They're fighting with each other. I've never seen anything like it. Russia's involved in this. And, you know, even Russia's like Dugin, Alexander Dugin,
Oh,
who,
yeah, who's the
and
propagandist in charge, yeah.
yeah, and Malofeyev. I mean, they are all bashing Trump. They're all bashing America for doing this. They're all warning. Putin yesterday came out with a warning, and Trump is stuck because if he goes towards Russia and calls this off, I mean, then he has to deal with the Israelis and with, he'll have that whole fallout. And if he goes with Israel and carries this out, you will see Russia spend the next few years destroying him. I mean, they'll just create complete chaos. But the one thing, like I said, that with all of this happening, it's always fascinating to see because you kind of can flush out who the actual Russian agents are, who have been co-opted, versus the people who just, are seeking power. And you see a handful in Congress who are literally repeating all the same talking points that's in Russian media and that's being pushed out as a narrative. And then on the other hand, you have the, other MAGA crowd who is thinks power is being pro-Israel. This is where they're staying on that path.
What do you make of Tulsi Gabbard being pushed out? Because she obviously is Russia's number one asset as far as I'm concerned, wittingly or not.
They're devastated, devastated.
But what do you
Even
make of
Dugin.
Trump? What do you make of Trump so publicly denigrating her? It was almost gratuitous the way he did it. And where she said Iran, just for people who don't know, she said Iran is not close to nuclear war, or sorry, excuse me, nuclear weapons. And he said, I don't really care what Tulsi Gabbard has to say. I mean, that's quite a statement from a man who just appointed her 4 months ago. She's his pick. It's not like he inherited her. And suddenly he's totally denigrating her. And so, what do you make of all that? What do you think that's all about?
Because Israel is pushing him on this, and
But
Israel, I'm
she's,
sure,
yeah.
Israel knows that she's a Russian asset. Every intelligence and agency and country knows that she's a Russian asset, and the fact is that they don't want Russia interfering with their, you know, goal, which is to strike Iran and to have regime change. So they're pushing him. And meanwhile, you have to see even Dugin was confused. Like, where is Tulsi? What happened to her? Like Russia right now is doing everything to try to pull Trump back in their corner. It is a tug of war. I mean, you go right now, it's fascinating. You go right now on Twitter. First of all, you see an intelligence information battlefield. You have Iranian disinformation, information operations, Russian, Israeli, and American. So you have four intelligence agencies on top of probably minor ones who have their own agenda pushing, their operations, disinformation, propaganda. And at the same time, Trump is really stuck. I mean, like I said, you damned if you do, you damned if you don't, because Bibi put him backed him right into such a corner that he can't like move. And interestingly enough, even one of the conspiracy Russian outlets yesterday had this thing that Israel might even attack Americans in order to push Trump over the line, that now he does have to respond. And they said, oh, they might, carry out a false flag operation in order to push Trump over that line. And they're trying on their end to wield him, but they've lost influence just because right now Bibi and the Israelis have him right now, like they have the influence and whatnot. And that's why you see Trump wobbling. I don't believe that he's wobbling just like that. I really think that he gets off the phone with Putin, who's like, Biad, Suko, what are you doing? you know, and then he comes out and he's like,
Olga just cursed very, very profanely in Russian, just so you know. For people who
what?
don't know for people who don't know what she said, there's no English equivalent because it's really bad. But go ahead.
And it rolls off the tongue so naturally that
Right.
it's like, I'm like, what restaurant are we picking? And that's how it rolls off. Um, but Putin, gets all, calls Trump, and you see Trump come out, and we need negotiations and this and that. And then once the Israelis get into his ear, oh, they can't have a nuclear weapon. They can't. And the funny thing is that the Israelis know that Trump's biggest fear is nuclear weapons. And the Russians know this because Russia has, used this nuclear angle as the way to control Trump, even with Ukraine and just in general. And for people who don't know, in 1980s, Trump was so petrified of nuclear weapons. I believe his uncle or someone was like a nuclear physicist. He was so petrified that he actually sought a post to the Soviet Union to become the ambassador to solve the nuclear hate code issues during the Cold War. And he's absolutely like there are certain things like that he has fears over. Nuclear is one. Putin has his own set of fears, and for Trump, it's the nuclear. And they're both playing. This is why Russia has always played on that angle of World War III and nuclear war, because they know that this is his thing that you can really like freak him out. At the same time, the Israelis know the same exact thing. So they're sitting and filling his ear that Iran is going to have a nuclear weapon tomorrow and they're going to send one to United States and they're going to bomb everything. So both are, it's two intelligence agencies like pushing and pulling. And this is why he looks like a bobblehead on a card. This is our president who doesn't actually have a strategy, but is like literally like you look at a bobblehead and it's just sits there like this, whichever ear gets first. And this is why you see this inconsistency. But the Israelis are winning because they are managing to sideline the Tulsis and anyone who, is pro hate code has this anti Israeli agenda. Um and that's it. So it really is something to behold, watching all these information operations playing out at the same time. And I'm very curious if Trump crosses this line, what Russia will do next. Because, yes, on one hand, they could still use him for Ukraine and use him for other, operations. But at the same time, I mean, this is a huge, huge hit to
I
them.
don't know what they can do because I mean, as much as we sit here thinking that and talking about all of their disinformation campaigns and everything else they do, Putin's number one priority is Ukraine. And he could be furious with Trump on Iran, as he clearly is.
Hmm.
He could send out his disinformation trolls on Iran, as he certainly will, and he already has. But he can't afford to really alienate or piss off Trump because he needs him on Ukraine because Trump is carrying water for him on Ukraine. I mean,
Hmm.
there's no question, and not just on Ukraine. He's carrying water for him to get reinstated into the community of nations, as you saw at the G7. He's talking about how we need to bring Russia back into the G7, make it the G8 again. How we need to bring them back effectively as a co-equal partner in the community of nations, despite the fact that economically they really don't belong in the G7. I mean, they're a failing petrostate that's about to go into a deep recession, and in some ways, this Iran war is good for them because the price of oil is going to go up, which only helps them. So, you know, they can't really afford to completely break with Trump.
They're not going to break with him. And Russia never does anything in a clear line
Right.
because what Russia does, like, yes, we saw the full scale invasion of Ukraine, but the way Russia operates, it's always carrying out attacks, operations, and having, this deniable plausibility. They always keep separate themselves in a few degrees from whatever is happening. So whether they're trafficking drugs, it'll be done through mafia. whether they, illegally annexed Crimea. They didn't directly send military. They sent, the little green men, which Western intelligence agencies understood was, special units, forces within Russia's government. But they didn't, if you ask them at the time, what's happening in Crimea? We don't even know what's happening. We're just watching the news like everyone else. So here, they're not going to directly distance themselves. Publicly, they will stay with him. Privately, they can do a hell of a lot. And, Trump is humiliating America with his, lobbying for, I just looked at him and I was like, this is gross. I mean, to stand there and lobby in Canada for Russia. On the other hand, as disgusting as it is, does it have an effect? This is one of those operations, whatever Trump can lobby, there's no way he's going to convince any of the members to take Russia back. So Russia's not getting a positive except just having the US president, like an idiot standing there, pushing their propaganda. But Russia's not going to be re-entered back to this. Are you kidding? If anything, right now, the rest of the G7, which frankly should be the G6 temporarily, the rest of them are strengthening their sanctions and really like going now after Russia's, gas and oil. So that didn't help. And as far as with Ukraine, publicly he has been sabotaging Ukraine. He gave Russia momentum when they started pulling aid and cut off intel sharing temporarily and even now. But at the same time, you have Europe who has really, if you look at the percentage, like Europe now is carrying the weight for what US is. So Russia is still back to square one because you have not only Europe more dedicated than ever, not to only help Ukraine and ramp up all the weapons deliveries and aid, but also sounding the alarm every single day, taking preparations to secure European soil because of an impending attack by Russia. Like we had this discussion a few weeks ago, Germany sending 5,000 troops to Lithuania to protect against Russia. I mean, this is something unprecedented. German troops haven't left. German territory since post World War II. I mean, for them to get involved. So you see everyone helping. So even though, yes, Trump publicly can continue to humiliate and degrade America, break our alliances, and he's useful and they'll continue publicly supporting him. Privately, you'll see a lot of operations against him. And Russia's absolutely excellent with covert operations where they leave their signature, but then go ahead, prove it. And what are you going to do about it?
Because the whole point is not to support Trump. The whole point is to
No.
destabilize the United States. I mean,
Yes.
let's be clear. It doesn't.
Yes.
The reason they were so pro-Trump is because he's a destabilizing figure.
Yes.
And the more you destabilize the current president and the political situation here, and maybe create a rift within MAGA, create a rift within the Republican foreign policy establishment, all of that is all to the good because it keeps the United States occupied on domestic politics and
Yep.
on Trump. The weaker Trump is, the weaker the United States is, the weaker
Yep.
any intervention we can. It only, I think they look at this as a zero sum game, right? It's a seesaw. What's bad for them is good for us, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're absolutely right. I think that's true. That for all that people think, well, he's Russia's useful idiot, or maybe not a useful idiot. It's unclear. But it doesn't matter. What he is a chaos agent. That's why they like him. And the more chaos he can foment here domestically, the better it is.
Not chaos only agent, but that he brings these false equivalencies. I'll tell you on Saturday, I was monitoring Russia's news, on what's happening in with Israel Iran because you could get Iranian statements and news. I mean, instantly. Like Americans don't cover this. The minute any news agency in Iran, makes a statement or said something, you get better access from Russia. You know what their main story was on Saturday? A whole online live updating, minute by minute of the protest. But they didn't cover the No Kings protest rallies, in a normal way, showing everything. Their whole life was the police beating a protester or a car running someone over. The few pocket incidents you
Of
had,
course.
6, 7 million, maybe 10 million, 11, we don't know how many, but you had millions of Americans coming out. 99.9% of it was absolutely peaceful, to the point that people are comfortably strolling with their, kids in the stroller, and it's like, going to the carnival to show your support for America. But you have like this atmosphere where, you're safe. And Russia is doing the opposite. Why is it doing this? Not only just, to show how you call it, not only just to show the chaos here, but also for this false equivalency that Trump provides, which is that when Russians see the images of police beating a protester or masked men abducting someone, this is what happens in Russia. So how is it the United States will ever again go and say, Russia carries out these human rights abuses within their country, when Russia now had the whole thing of the U.S. military Marine battalions deployed on U.S. streets? They will throw it right back and say, "What are you doing?" And
Of
not to
course.
mention, yesterday, like literally, talk about this is next level trolling. Putin had, a Q&A yesterday and made a million comments. And one of them was, oh, the international community and the UN and I don't even know what other agency needs to get together and start protecting journalists because too many are being murdered. This is a country that has killed more journalists than every country combined. And this is how he very like with a smug face seriously said, there are too many journalists, that are being injured and killed, and whatnot. And the international community really needs to come together to, and then at the same time, you have news coming out of US. We had 37 cases of journalists shot at covering LA. 37. One had to have surgery, one was shot point blank in the head. There were no
Co-
protesters. And
Covering
he's
what? Covering LA?
LA, the protest in
You're
LA.
kidding. I didn't know that. I was away. Wow.
37 cases, to the point that right now, I mean, you had an Australian journalist who was live on air. Nothing. You had a whole lineup.
Who was shooting at them?
The police,
The
LAPD.
police were. Okay.
LAPD, you had a whole line of the LAPD and this Australian journalist who was covering, nothing behind her. It's not like one of those situations where they're, mangled right in a crowd. The back is fine, the side is fine. The cop looked and shot at her, to the point that the Australians were so livid that they summoned the Americans. The Prime Minister, Albanese, I believe his name is, summoned the Americans to say, I've watched this video over and over. What is this? Because she literally, the cop,
Why
you
why
see,
is this not on the front page of the New York Times every day?
I don't know.
That you have a militarized police department shooting at journalists.
You have to see PBS, not PBS, I'm sorry. NPR,
NPR.
NPR, I believe. NPR ProPublica documented just recently, a few days ago,
Wow.
every single thing, and you see various videos coming out. I mean, it's horrific. Another journalist, he literally came on to CNN. He had the rubber bullet right here. They looked at him and shot him straight like this. I mean, literally. They are doing it on purpose in order to silence media, and they don't want media covering the protest for whatever reason. I guess they don't want anyone to be held accountable. You had one CNN journalist who was on air with Laura Coates, and he identified himself as press like 5 times. I'm with CNN, which is hard. I mean, how can you not know? Like a CNN journalist is standing there with a freaking microphone, cameras surrounding him. Everything is labeled CNN. It's not they, you know, and he's on the air and they detained him and arrested two of his camera crews. And he's like, Laura, I'm being detained. I'm being detained. So you
Wow.
have, and then at the same
I
time,
missed all that because I was away. That's crazy.
and then you have Democrats being arrested at the same time. Now,
Yes.
how are we ever going to go to Russia again? I mean, it'll take a while to say, you can't arrest your opposition when we are arresting our opposition. You can't, intimidate, harass, or murder journalists when we are intimidating and harassing and detaining journalists. You can't do this when we're doing this. So the false equivalencies that Trump provides them, you can't invade Ukraine, but we're going to help do a regime change in Iran. And then while we're at it, we want to invade Greenland and we want to invade Canada.
You know, Before we wrap up, I will say this, and I've said this for a long time. When this is all over, and eventually it will be over, it's going to be very painful, and I'm not sure what is going to be left of the detritus when it's over, but it will be over one day. We need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission in a very big way, because that is the only way we get our moral authority back. That is the only way we get our democracy back. And that is the only way we have accountability for what happened. We cannot elect another Joe
No,
Biden who's going to simply call Trump the former guy and say this was an aberration in American politics and let's move on. This is not an aberration. This is who we are. And if we don't take accountability and we don't force accountability upon people who allow this and enable this and promote this and order this, and that includes whoever the commissioner of the LAPD is at the moment, I don't know what is going to happen to this country. This is Los Angeles, the second largest city in the country. And I will tell you, Jessica Tisch, who's the New York City police commissioner, who I actually happen to know, I don't think would ever allow this. But whoever is allowing this in Los Angeles needs to be held accountable. I suspect that's the commissioner because that's who the buck stops with.
yeah, absolutely. Because we should not have journalists. And this is something that's very, something that really gets me. Like, we cannot have journalists, feel unsafe operating for simply doing their job. They're there to document. And this is not just a like a biased coverage to show, oh, look at the protesters. This can also work for the police if a protester abuses them of something, accuses them of some kind of abuse of power. The journalist can say, well, here's our video, and you can look at it and, and make a determination of what happened. I mean, the media is supposed to operate, free and fair and feel safe. And what is happening here, and it started under Trump to begin with. I mean, we had a lot of the first term, journalist organizations and watchdogs who were warning that it's becoming increasingly more and more
Acosta,
dangerous. Yeah,
Jim Acosta is the perfect example of that. If anybody here doesn't follow him on Substack, you should. He's a wonderful, wonderful man and a great journalist. But Jim Acosta got pushed out of CNN because Jim Acosta was not beloved by Donald Trump and was telling the truth. And Trump hated Jim Acosta. And so CNN made a business decision to get rid of Jim Acosta. I'll just say it.
yeah,
But people like Jim Acosta were warning people. Terry Moran, who probably should not have said what he said because that's not what you should do, but nevertheless was telling the truth.
yeah,
But bygone, right? Stephanopoulos gets to stick around because Stephanopoulos groveled and signed a piece of paper saying that he was wrong about saying that E. Jean Carroll was raped 15 times. Give me a break. Give me a break. And what that results in is people like the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, who now has banned the City Hall reporter from the New York Daily News, which for people who don't know, New York is a tabloid in New York City, for doing nothing more than asking questions, jumping in and asking questions, which is what reporters do.
that's their
And
job.
you see that cancer spreading. It's not just Trump, it's not just MAGA, it is MAGA adjacent people like the mayor of New York, who PS ran as a Democrat the first time and now is running as an independent. But now he's doing that kind of stuff because politicians feel empowered.
Yeah. No, we need to push back against all of this because these are the basic freedoms, you know, that keep a country, you know,
Thanks.
keep a democracy. I mean, because you need to have accountability, and journalists need to be able to do their jobs. Because even though I constantly, bash the media, my criticism is more towards one, the headlines. They really need to stop with the headlines and really, have more like appropriate headlines that aren't just to grab your attention but really meet the moment. And two, it's the cable news networks, because they just sit there and I mean they need
Ugh.
to fill 24 hours and they fill it with absolute garbage. And this is where my criticism is. But I do my tracker, and my tracker, I still have the ability, whether it's Washington Post or New York Times or Wall Street Journal, by the way, who has been doing an incredible job holding Trump and his
Yep.
people accountable, whether it's with crypto schemes, whether it's, with abuses inside of agencies, them gutting agencies. Um, NPR, ProPublica. I mean, there are so many outlets, and I mean, the average journalist is just trying to do their job and document what is happening, and that's it. That's all they want to do is document what is happening, and investigate if there's any kind of corruption or abuses, and that's it. And the fact that they're not able to safely operate is something that we really need to push back on.
Agreed. I will say, because as you know, we sit here and bash the media and especially cable news a lot, including CNN, which I'm on all the time. But I will say CNN really was a godsend to me when I was sitting there under missile fire, again, doing the work that the United States government was not doing by providing information. On that note, we've been going at it for about an hour 15, so we are probably going to wrap, not probably, we are going to wrap it up. Um, couple of announcements. One is obviously join us next Thursday again at 11 a.m. For another episode of Pax Americana. Second thing is for our paid subscribers, we are doing another town hall probably next week. We're just trying to figure out the time to
And
see
we
whether,
apologize for
yeah,
missing this one,
we're
but
apologize for missing this one. We would have done it on Tuesdays. We'd advertised, but I had just gotten back and quite frankly, had not slept in days and was just exhausted. You would not want to do town hall with me because my head was not where it needed to be. But we'll do it hopefully next week. We're just trying to find a good time to do it. If you are a paid subscriber to Olga's and to my Substacks, and or you don't have to be a paid subscriber to both, please join us for that. We loved having the first one. It was just wonderful to meet so many of you and talk to so many of you and just have a real dialogue. So I'm really looking
yep.
forward to that. I know you are too, Olga. And on that note, I hope everybody has a nice and peaceful holiday. Well, it's not a holiday weekend, a nice and peaceful weekend. I guess it is a holiday. It's Juneteenth. So happy
Yes.
Juneteenth. Um, and uh, by the time we speak next week, I don't know, will we be at war again? Maybe. Or is he going to taco out? Maybe.
I
Nobody
don't know.
knows.
We might get off now because I haven't been paying attention to the
Yeah,
news right now. It's
exactly.
like you could step away to cook dinner, and it's like, oh look, we're at war.
Yeah,
I-
exactly. Here it comes
I'm
again.
so happy you're back safe. I'm
Thank
so happy
you.
your family's back,
Thank you.
and
Thank
we
you.
will see everyone next week. We'll
I'm
let everyone know about the town hall and about the town hall. Yeah.
yep. All right, everybody. See you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.